Today, we are going to talk about endocrine system. It is a system we are going to talk about, so it involves multiple organs that contribute to endocrine system. This slide shows three persons. The gentleman in the middle is very tall. On his left, there is a lady who is supposed to be a normal size. And the gentleman on the right side of the tall man, he is adult. He's just like a child size. So that means the gentleman on the right is lacking growth hormone, and the gentleman in the center is having lots of growth hormone. So that is growth hormone. It is part of the endocrine system hormones, and we are going to talk about this gradually in detail. We know this slide. It is a slide from the cell and tissue. And as we know, when we make a group of cells, and when these cells produce any aqueous fluid, that is called a gland. And these glands contain fluid, and that fluid contains usually proteins. So that is the definition of gland. A gland is a group of epithelial cells that produce aqueous fluid. We knew that there are two types of gland. In general, they are endocrine and exocrine gland. Exocrine glands, they synthesize hormones or gastric juice, which through the deck, so they need a deck to get into the bloodstream or the gastrointestinal tract. And endocrine glands, they are deckless glands. They do not have any ducts. They synthesize hormone and they directly secrete into the bloodstream. The best example is the thyroid gland. So we start talking about hormones. Hormones are produced by glands. So what are the hormones? Hormones are chemical substances that is produced from one organ. It goes to a distant site to act on the another part of the body, which is called target site. So there are two types of hormones. The first one is amino acid base, and second type is steroid base. Here, we have to make it a little bit more clear. The amino acid base hormones are produced or synthesized in the rough endoplasmic reticulum, whereas steroid base hormones are synthesized in the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And amino acid base hormones are exocytosed from the cell, whereas the steroid base hormone, they are secreted into the bloodstream via diffusion. Of course, amino acid base hormone can be short amino acid, long amino acid, or modified amino acids. This picture shows where the most of the endocrine glands are. It's pretty simple. In the brain, hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal body. These three glands are in the brain, and they are part of the endocrine system. If you come down in front of the neck, there will be thyroid gland, and just below that thyroid gland, posterior to the sternum, we will have thymus. In the abdomen, we will have pancreas. Pancreas is in the epigastrium region, which is posterior to the stomach, and it is a retroperitoneal organ, so it is not inside the peritoneal cavity. And you will also see adrenal glands or suprarenal glands, because these two glands, which sit on each kidney in the upper pole, and in females, there will be ovaries in the pelvis, and in males, there will be testicles in the scrotum. So these all, you can see, they are part of the endocrine system. But of course, there are many endocrine glands in our body. So I'm going to split into three groups. The first group, pituitary, pineal body, thyroid, parathyroid, and adrenal glands. These are purely endocrine glands. They do not mix, they are purely endocrine glands. The second group has endocrine function as well as the other function. For example, hypothalamus, it has nervous function and endocrine function, therefore it becomes a neuroendocrine gland. The same thing, thymus has immune function and endocrine function. Pancreas in the gastrointestinal tract, which has got both exocrine and endocrine function. And the testes and ovaries, they have endocrine function as well as reproductive functions. There is a very small group where the part of their tissue has some endocrine function. For example, heart, atrionatriuretic peptide. This is a peptide, which is the hormone. Therefore, heart, some part of the heart secrete hormone, and therefore, and heart is also endocrine organ. Kidneys, vitamin D synthesis, erythropoietins, and renin. All these enzymes and hormones, they are part of the endocrine system. In gastrointestinal tract, gastrin, cholecystokinins, or in vitamin D production of the skin. So all these structure organs play some part in the endocrine system. So now we know the organs of the endocrine system. How do these organs get stimulated? They can be stimulated in three ways. Number one, hormonal. So hormone from another organ come and act on that endocrine organ, and in response, they secrete hormone. Second way is humoral, because of the environmental changes. For example, when there is low in calcium ion in the blood, the parathyroid gland gets stimulated and secrete hormone. Number three way is neural stimuli, which means when there is fight or flight reaction, where there is stress, the adrenal gland will secrete epinephrine or epinephrine. So this slide also explains about humoral, hormonal, and nervous stimulation. we are going to see another person who is giant, who is much bigger than other people around him. And this, I got this picture from Wikipedia. If you find gigantism, and you're going to see this picture. So like everything in life, everything comes to an end. When the hormone is secreted by the endocrine gland, that hormone, once it gets to the desired level in the body, it will go and stop the other organ, which is stimulating its secretion. For example, when we have enough testosterone, that we go back and stop the stimulus from the hypothalamus and pituitary to keep stimulating on the testes. This is called negative feedback or feedback loop. This is a diagram showing where the pituitary gland sits. If you look on the left drawing, then if you draw a line from the side of the eye, draw an imaginary line towards the ear. So just before it gets in front of the ear, you can see the pituitary gland. Just above the pituitary, there will be hypothalamus, and just above and posterior to the pituitary, you're going to find pineal body. Don't confuse with the mammillary body. So this pituitary gland sits in the bony socket, which is called fossa. Pituitary gland itself is also called hypophysis. So the bony socket where the pituitary gland sits is called pituitary fossa. Let's look at closely to the pituitary gland. So we can now see pituitary gland has two portions, anterior lobe and posterior lobe, which is also called anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary has subdivisions. The most biggest and most important part is pars distalis. Between anterior and posterior pituitary, you will see pars intermediate in between. And the last one is pars tuberalis, which wrap around the posterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary has two portions, pars nervosa and infundibulum. So this slide will show pituitary gland, which anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis. Anterior pituitary is connected to the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus secrete hormone. Hormone will come and act on the pituitary. Therefore, it is hormonal based. Therefore, we will see it is adenohypophysis. Posterior pituitary, where it is communicated with the hypothalamus through the neurons, and therefore we will say neurohypophysis. Anterior pituitary has 3 subdivisions, and posterior pituitary has 2. And pituitary gland receive blood supply from the internal carotid artery, one of the main branches of aortic arch, from where superior hypophyseal artery and inferior hypophyseal artery arise. So pituitary gland is supplied by superior and inferior hypophyseal arteries, which are the branches of internal carotid artery, and these arteries supply the pituitary gland. Let's look closely. We have talked about this. We have 2 pituitary glands, anterior and posterior pituitary glands. anterior pituitary gland is connected to the hypothalamus, and hypothalamus secrete neurons, hypothalamus secrete hormones, and these hormones via the bloodstream gets to anterior pituitary, and then anterior pituitary with synthesize some hormones secrete into the bloodstream. There is big difference with the posterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary is connected to the hypothalamus through the neurons. And these neurons in the hypothalamus synthesize hormone, and it's stored in the posterior pituitary. So posterior pituitary actually is a storage space. It doesn't synthesize hormones. And then when there is a stimulus, this posterior pituitary, we release all these hormones into the bloodstream. So this slide is important because it is showing some important hormones from the anterior pituitary. They are thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, follicular stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, growth hormone, and prolactin. This lecture is somewhat like physiology lecture. If we do not talk about that, it will come in the physiology as well. So thyroid hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone will go and stimulate the thyroid gland. Adrenocorticotropic hormone will go and stimulate to the adrenal cortex. Follicular stimulating hormone will go and stimulate the ovaries and testes. The same luteinizing hormone. Growth hormone will have effect on the muscles, bones, and prolactin will stimulate the breast to synthesize milk. So in case of posterior pituitary gland, there are only two hormones they store. They are synthesized in the hypothalamus and stored in the posterior pituitary. These two hormones are ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin. Antidiuretic hormones, anti against diuretic mean urination. So this hormone will absorb water from the kidney so that we deplete less water from the body. Oxytocin, it stimulates the smooth muscle contraction. So it is important in uterine contraction and ejaculation of the breast milk. The same slide. When we have lack of antidiuretic hormone, we get diabetes insipidus. It's a condition where we lose large volume of water from the body. And if increased secretion, we get a condition called SIADH. Oxytocin is important. It is important after childbirth, where the uterus need to contract more to stop bleeding after delivery, and breast milk ejection, these are important. In pituitary gland, there are three basic cells: acidophil, basophil, and chromophobes. This is just for your knowledge. Let's go to the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland receives its blood supply from the superior, inferior thyroid arteries and thyroidema. So three arteries supply the thyroid gland. We have two thyroid glands, one on the right and one on the left, and they are joined by a tissue which is called isthmus. And if you compare with the anatomical cervical spine level, it is cervical spine level 5, and it can extend down to thoracic 1 vertebrae. There are two hormones in the thyroid, two cells in the thyroid gland, follicular cell and parafollicular cells. Follicular cells synthesize thyroid hormone, which is T3 and T4. They are just amino acids and iodine combination. Parafollicular cells secrete calcitonin, which reduce the blood calcium. This picture shows where the thyroid gland sit. I believe you can see the isthmus of the thyroid gland. If you follow on either side of the isthmus, you will see the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is very close or just anterior to the air passage, trachea. And at the back, esophagus. So one has enlarged thyroid gland, we can get difficulty in breathing or difficulty in swallowing. Look at this picture. This lady's eye, cornea, is not covered with the eyelids, both on upper and lower eyelids. So this is a condition called exophthalmos. So because of the lid retraction and because of the fat formation behind the eye has been pushed forward. And the black cornea area is not covered by any part of the eyelids, which is not normal. This is one of the features of thyrotoxicosis. So the typical history for hyperthyroidism, overactive thyroid gland, is usually in ladies in their middle age. They will have weight loss, fatigue, or tired. They are irritable. They are feeling hot, warm. They eat a lot. They got double vision because of the eye problem. They got menstrual irregularities. So these are the typical features of hyperthyroidism. In hypothyroidism, it's opposite. The person is fatigued. That person is depressed, putting weight, losing hair, feeling cold and constipated. There is also menstrual irregularity. So all the thyroid problems are more common in women than men. Thyroid, hypoactive thyroid, can occur in newborn. This is a condition called cretinism, where the baby lacks thyroid hormone and they are identified by failure to thrive, not eating, not moving much, with a protruded tongue, enlarged tongue through the mouth. On the right side, this lady has enlarged thyroid gland. The definition of goiter is enlarged thyroid gland. So this lady has thyroid gland is enlarged. Not necessarily hypothyroid. It could be euthyroid, it could be hyperthyroid, or it could be underactive thyroid. Parathyroid glands. These are the glands which is stacked at the back of the thyroid glands. Generally, there are 4, 2 on each side, but it has been reported that there could be about 8 parathyroid glands in one's body. Parathyroid cells are called cells in the parathyroid gland are called parathyroid cells, and it is important in calcium metabolism. Parathyroid gland secrete parathyroid hormone, which regulates the calcium level in the body. Oxalate cells, we are not sure about these. So this is the picture looking at passing from the back. We can see two thyroid glands at the back of the posterior surface of the thyroid gland. We can see the parathyroid gland stack at the back of the thyroid. Thymus, which is important for the immune function. It is just posterior to the sternum. It produces T cells and it involved in the immune system. We are going to make it short. There might be a little bit more in the textbook, but I'm going to leave it there. Gonads, testes, and ovaries. In testes, there will be interstitial cells. They will produce androgen. There are three types of androgens. The main type is testosterone. In ovaries, there will be ovarian follicular cells, which will produce estrogen and progesterone. Let's talk about pineal body. Pineal body or pineal gland. It is just posterior and above the pituitary gland level. Technically, it is called diencephalon area, which is part of the forebrain. Pineal glands contain pinealocytes. In between the pinealocytes, there will be calcium. And because of the calcium, it becomes radiodense, radio opaque, and it shows on the plain X-ray. And it is also called brain sun. Pineal gland produce melatonin, which regulates the circadian rhythm. When there is darkness of the night, there will be less stimulation in the retina, so less visual input. That signal will be taken through the thoracic spinal cord along the superior cervical ganglion and reach to the pineal gland. Pineal gland will secrete melatonin, which stimulate the sleepiness. Pancreas. Pancreas is both exocrine and endocrine organ. It is around the epigastrium. It is posterior to the peritoneum, so it is retroperitoneal structure behind the peritoneum. It has head, body, and tail. It is posterior to the stomach. It has got both deck, which is part of the exocrine function, and there are also cells, which is part of the endocrine system. So pancreas has both exocrine and endocrine gland. Exocrine is a bigger portion of the pancreas, which contributes 85% of the pancreatic mass. The cells for the exocrine functions are acinar cells, and they contain DEX. These acinar cells produce digestive juice and bicarbonate, which is secreted via the DEX into the gastrointestinal tract. The cells for the endocrine system is called pancreatic islets or islets of Langerhans. These cells are alpha, beta, and delta. Alpha cell produce glucagon, beta cell produce insulin, delta cell produce somatostatin. So insulin reduces the blood sugar level, glucagon increases the blood sugar level, and somatostatin, it stopped the secretion of other hormones. Let's look at this lady. They are the same lady. This picture is from the textbook. On the left, the lady looks slim, and on the right, She put on some weight, and there is a bump on the nape of the neck, and that is called buffalo hump, which is the fat deposition. This is a condition of Cushing syndrome. So what is going on? The problem is in the adrenal gland. Let's talk about the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland sits on top of the upper pole of the kidneys, and therefore we can also call suprarenal glands. Suprarenal glands blood supply is easy. Suprarenal arteries, there are multiple suprarenal arteries. Adrenal gland can be divided into adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. The easier portion is adrenal medulla, which secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine direct, and it will go onto the receptor directly. Adrenal cortex has three portions. They are zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. In short, we try to remember as GFR, glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. So zona glomerulosa secrete mineralocorticoids or aldosterone, which is involved in the salt and water retention function. Zona fasciculata secrete glucocorticoids, which is involved in steroid hormone for stress, steroid hormone for sex. And zona reticularis has got sex steroid. So the way we try to remember is from outside to inwards. The more inwards you get, the sweeter it gets. So outside is salt, is salty. The more central you get, then you got sex steroid hormones. As we say, adrenal gland sits on top of the upper pole of the kidneys on each side. Right and left kidneys on top of the right and left kidneys. They are pyramidal shape or triangular shape. And zones, these zones are important. You will come to understand in physiology lectures as well. And this picture shows the venous system for the adrenal gland. If you look carefully on the right side, the veins coming out from the adrenal gland go directly into the inferior vena cava. On the left adrenal gland, it goes into the renal vein, which has some implication. The right picture is a cadaveric picture of the similar place of the abdomen, which is showing both kidneys and both adrenal glands, aorta, and inferior vena cava, which is the main venous system carrying blood from the lower limb and pelvis towards the heart. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Before I stopped, let me rewind it. We talk about endocrine system. Endocrine system has many different organs. The main organs are hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland, that's in the brain. In front of the neck, there will be thyroid gland, and just below it, there will be thymus gland. Inside the upper abdomen, there will be pancreas and adrenal gland sitting on the kidneys. In the pelvis, there will be ovaries and testicles. Of course, there are many other organs which has cells and they function as endocrine gland, for example, heart, gastrointestinal tract, kidneys, and skin. All right.